I think mindset has become one of those popular terms as of late that everybody kind of already knows and yet somehow still struggles with immensely. It's not uncommon that when a patient makes their way into my office, they've typically been struggling for at least a year and they've already seen numerous other providers. Why I want to emphasize this is because I can imagine that if I were in that situation, bouncing around from one provider to the next, never making any real significant progress, that it could become easy to fall into a place where my illness dictates my entire life, as it does for a lot of my patients. So the question I want to answer in this video is just how much does your outlook on a situation dictate how you see the world? Let's start by discussing a study that was performed back in 1979, where a group of 75-year-old men were involved in a week-long experiment. These men knew very little about the nature of the experiment except that they would be gone for a week at a retreat center. And they could bring along no pictures, newspapers, magazines, or books, anything dated later than 1959, which would be 20 years prior. When they arrived, the men were gathered into a room and told them for the next week that they had to pretend as though it was the year 1959, a time when these 75-year-old men would have been only 55. They were also supposed to dress and act like they did at that time, and they were even given ID badges with pictures of themselves 20 years younger. Everything was made in a way that they would see the world through the lens of their 55-year-old self, all the way down to the reading material that was placed on the coffee table. Some even took to referring to their jobs in the present tense as if they had never retired. Before this week-long retreat, the men were tested on all things that tend to deteriorate with age: physical strength, posture, cognition, short-term memory, and all that other stuff. And after the retreat, the men had improved in every single category. They were significantly more flexible. They had better posture. Their strength had improved. Their average eyesight improved by almost 10%. And get this, in over half the men, the intelligence, which thought to be pretty fixed at the time, also improved. And even their physical appearance changed. Random people who knew nothing about the experiment or nothing about these men were shown pictures of them both before and after the experiment and asked to guess their age. Based on these objective ratings, the men looked on average 3 years younger than when they arrived just a week prior. In another very interesting study, Japanese researchers blindfolded a group of students and told them that their right arm was being rubbed with poison ivy. And guess what? Afterwards, all 13 of the students' arms reacted with the classic symptoms of poison ivy. Not surprising, right? Until you find out that the plant that they used for that study wasn't poison ivy at all. It was just a regular old plant. The students' beliefs were actually strong enough to create the biological effects of poison ivy, even though they weren't ever touched with poison ivy. And it gets better. On the student's other arm, the researchers rubbed actual poison ivy, but they were told that it was just some harmless plant. And even though all 13 students were highly allergic to poison ivy, only 2 of them broke out into the rash. Let's keep going. In this study, they took the cleaning staff of 7 different hotels. They told half of the employees just how much exercise they were actually getting in their day-to-day with things that they were doing, like how many calories are they burning, how similar vacuuming is to an actual cardio workout, stuff like that. And the other half was just told to go about their regular business. They didn't get any of that good news. Several weeks later, they found that those who had been primed to think of their work as exercise had actually lost weight, and not only that, their cholesterol levels also dropped. The 2 groups were doing the exact same amount of work. They didn't increase their work or anything like that. The only difference was how their brains conceived the work that they were doing. So with all that being said, do you think that your outlook on life could potentially be playing into how you feel? I don't know. You have to decide that for yourself, but I can tell you that just subjectively, when I'm working with a patient who identifies with their illness, making a lot of progress for that patient is a little bit more difficult. And trust me, I get it. When you've been struggling for months or even years, it can become easy to just blame everything on your circumstances. I think these studies just go to show that our external reality is far more malleable than many of us think. I want to be very clear. This video is in no way me trying to say that if you just had a better outlook on things, maybe your symptoms, whatever that may be, would be a little bit better. Of course, in most instances, there are true physiological mechanisms that are contributing to your illness. But when you walk around all day, every day, with a poor attitude or just the mindset that this illness, whatever that may be, is just something that you'll deal with for the rest of the time that you're on this blue and green ball that we call home, will you ever get out of it? Maybe. A man by the name of Jimmy Dean once said that I can't change the direction of the wind, but I can adjust my sails to always reach my destination. Take that same attitude with your illness. In the majority of cases, there are things that can be done. So quit telling yourself that your current state of health is just your new normal. This is just a block in the road. One bad chapter of a book doesn't mean that the story has to have a bad ending. I'll give you an example. I work with a lot of patients who have chronic pain and chronic fatigue. One of the big things I discuss with these patients is the importance of exercise and how actually moving and getting your heart rate up has so many positive downstream effects that could help them get out of this pain syndrome or fatigue syndrome or what have you. These conditions can be really tough to manage because there ends up being this vicious cycle of I'm in so much pain or I'm so exhausted, all I want to do is lie in bed. And the only thing that I can guarantee is that if that is you, you won't get any better. I'd say it's probably a weekly occurrence where I hear, I'm just so tired, or I'm in so much pain that I can't exercise. And again, not saying that I don't feel for you if that's your complaint, but the problem is that when people hear the word exercise, they immediately jump to the most extreme of things, like going on a mile-long run or lifting weights. But if you can't do that because of X, Y, or Z, let's find something you can do. When it comes to most chronic illnesses, like true chronic illnesses, getting out of it without incorporating some sort of exercise is going to be really tough. So I'm constantly discussing with patients how important it is to move. Let's figure out something, whether that be like getting in the pool because it takes some of the stress off your joints, or maybe you're in so much pain that all you can do is lie on your back and move your arms around. Most of the time, it comes down to trial and error. And if you're just going to tell me and tell yourself that you can't without ever trying, you'll probably just end up digging yourself a little bit deeper. Remember, this is just one chapter in your story. With each failure, you're now one step closer to the answers that you've been looking for.